Yeah, I think we're back.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean the Gwadar project has not really reached the kind of the potential that they were hoping it would. But it again the whole idea of the BLA claiming that Gwadar project is bad because they were afraid that the Gwadar project and the development might bring in migrants from other parts of Pakistan and
Yes.
overwhelming local Baluch culture, which, as we mentioned before, Balochistan is very sparsely populated, and Gwadar was basically a fishing village prior. So there, there, there are legitimate concerns, but these are the concerns really they have between them and the Pakistan central government,
Hmm.
right? I mean, like this is something that they should have sorted out internally with the Pakistan government. Whatever they do, the tax on Chinese nationals in Pakistan, which has been going on for the last over 10 years now. These even Chinese were to pull out, it's not going to
Yeah.
improve the prospect of Balochistan either in terms of development or in terms of their relationship with the Pakistani state, unless they think somehow that will lead to the state collapse of Pakistan state. I don't know. I mean, right now Pakistan is an interesting case because it tried to be friends with both U.S. and China. I mean, Pakistan,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it depends on IMF loans because Pakistan is a heavily militarized state. A large portion of the state revenue is devoted to the Pakistan military, and their own revenue is not enough to cover that. So to cover the shortfall in the Pakistani budget, they have to go to IMF to ask for loans, and so the Pakistan is people trying to position Pakistan as some kind of client state of China. It's not. It's kind
The
of trying to.
client state of the U.S.
Yes, and it
I
has
mean,
been that
it's
way for a long time.
yeah. Well,
And
before it was
basic.
a colony of Britain, and then it was a client state of the U.S. Those are
Yeah,
the
I mean,
two things that
U.S.
Pakistan has been.
U.S. literally tell Pakistan what to do. Even though Pakistan supported Taliban on its rise in Afghanistan, but when after 9/11 happened, United States, I forgot which U.S. official that made the call to the Pakistani General Musharraf and told him, like, look, we will bomb you back to Stone Ages if you don't
Sounds like
help us.
Rumsfeld, could have been Cheney.
Yeah.
Yeah, could have been either
Well,
one of
yeah,
those
one of
guys.
these guys, the U.S. suspects. I mean,
Wolfowitz.
they literally said on the phone, "We will bomb you back to Stone Ages if you don't comply with our orders." And of course, Pakistan went along with it. So they ultimately, when the when U.S. throw down the gauntlet, Pakistan will comply.
So
Uh,
there's a couple of notes. Like one is the idea that China is engaged, like it's so ridiculous, the idea that these teachers are engaged in Chinese cultural imperialism. We're writing this on Twitter, an American social media website, in English, which we all speak because of British imperialism in Pakistan. So it's just like, yeah, the big problem in Pakistan is Chinese cultural imperialism. That's once we deal with that problem, Pakistan will be,
a happy
Pakistan will be
happy place.
a utopia.
Yes.
But I was reading this article in the Atlantic from 2009, and the author of the article interviewed some of the Baloch separatists in 2009. So there's some interesting quotes here about Gwadar. Nisar Baloch, general secretary of a Baloch nationalist organization, has unruly black hair and a thick mustache. But anyway, Pakistani army, he says, is the biggest land grabber. It's giving away the coast of Balochistan for peanuts to the Punjabis. The Punjabi army wears uniforms, but the soldiers are actually terrorists. In Gwadar, the army is operating as a mafia, falsifying land records. They say we don't have papers to prove ownership of the land. When we talk about our rights, they accuse us of being the Taliban. No matter how hard they try to turn Gwadar into Dubai, it won't work. There will be resistance. The pipelines going to China will not be safe. They have to cross through Baloch territory, and if our rights are violated, nothing will be secure. And then the article mentions the 2004 car bomb that killed 3 Chinese engineers. So there seems to be a very specific long-term targeting of Chinese people in Pakistan.
Yeah, this has been going on for a decade. And another thing about the BLA, I like to mention that originally, the original BLA, not the current BLA, the original BLA was supported in the 1970s by the Soviet. Because this coincides with Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. But after the Soviet pulled out of Afghanistan in 1989, the funding dried up, and the original BLA went silent for decades. For decades, because their funding source went dry, and then somehow BLA got reactivated in the early 2000s, around the time that they start attacking the Chinese nationals, and this is 2000 is also when China started to build the infrastructure project in Pakistan to connect the Gwadar ports, to build roads, and to build connectivity. So I mean, I don't have the concrete proof, but
it does make you wonder.
You wonder, right? And if you have U.S. Representative Dana Rohrabacher, who is
yeah,
he might be a former.
I looked up that guy. Yeah, he's not been reelected, but in 2012, there are some doozy quotes by a couple of these Congress people there that got obsessed with Balochistan. There's Congressman Rohrabacher in California. There's Louis Gohmert of Texas and Steve King of Iowa. And all of them argue for free Balochistan, specifically to break up Pakistan, and specifically to kind of punish and provide. They were sort of saying, we're sick of being dependent on Pakistan's cooperation in our occupation of Afghanistan. If we break Balochistan off of Pakistan, then they'll be our ally, and we won't have to depend on these unreliable Pakistanis who ultimately support the Taliban anyway. So there's definitely been at least a faction in the U.S. that wants this.
And Dana Rohrabacher was complaining about colonialism in Balochistan at the same time when U.S. is still occupying Iraq and Afghanistan, right? I mean, like Dana Rohrabacher is a guy who there's no interventionist war he doesn't like,
Okay.
And so it's, to me, that's kind of suspicious. I mean, I don't have the like I don't have the smoking gun, right? So, but it's to me, there's a smoke there.
This Louis Gohmert from Texas, in 2012 gave an interview in Berlin where he said the following. He said, "Let's talk about creating a Balochistan in the southern part of Pakistan. They'll stop the IEDs and all the weaponry coming into Afghanistan, and we got a shot to win over there." So the agenda is actually to create Balochistan to help America better occupy Afghanistan. And it's just sort of like, why are you in Afghanistan again? Well, to fight terrorism.
Yeah, of course. And
so
yeah, it's this is all very shady and murky, but I would not trust these guys as far as I can throw them. And somebody actually pointed out on Twitter that all these accusation of Chinese imperialism, exploitation in Balochistan, there's actually a Canadian mining company that's
Yeah.
involved in the mining project in Balochistan at the moment,
Right.
but we have not seen any attacks by the
Okay.
BLA on the Canadian nationals or
Yeah.
even voice their opposition to the Western firm's presence in
Yeah.
Balochistan.
Or the IMF for that matter,
Yeah.
right? Here's another one. This is also from the Al Jazeera article, which is called "Should the U.S. Support an Independent Balochistan?" And in an interview after a congressional hearing, someone named Bohr, I guess this is another U.S. political figure, when one discusses Balochistan, you are discussing a way to contain China. You are also discussing economic relationships between Iran and Pakistan. If the Chinese build their port in Gwadar, they will have a land route from Western China to the Indian Ocean. This is of strategic interest to the United States because Chinese ships would have a direct route to China and would no longer have to transit past the Indian and American navies, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like
So,
this, U.S. Navy had made no secret about holding a chokehold over the Chinese oil supply from Middle East via the Strait of Malacca, right? Because
mm,
that's where the waterways narrowest, through Singapore, between Singapore and Indonesia, and of course Singapore is a U.S. client state, and U.S. Navy in multiple papers have said, we have a chokehold on Chinese trade through the South China Sea by
mm,
going through the Strait of Malacca. So one of the strategic rationale for Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is to build more connectivity. So the Chinese the trade, well, external trade with China don't have to all go through the Straits of Malacca. So some of them can be diverted overland through the Eurasian land bridge through Russia to Europe. Now that road is blocked because of the Ukraine war. And another way is through West Asia, through Pakistan, then to Iran and to Turkey and onwards. But now, like, that will have to go through Balochistan, of course. And
So there's an interesting thing too where, you look at like China in Africa. You look at China, these different investments, and it's sort of like there's a thing I've noticed which is the because of a combination of Chinese like win-win solutions and their non-interference policy, what ends up happening is the more functional the country is, the better the
yes,
Chinese investment will work.
yes.
And if it's sort of a predatory state, it ends up not really being a very effective project anyway.
Yeah, I think the former Greek minister,
Varoufakis,
yes, he
Yanis Varoufakis.
actually brought up the point that about the Chinese project in the Greece, the
Yeah,
Piraeus ports,
yeah,
um, and he said, like, look, we look at the deal and we went back to the Chinese to
yeah,
ask to renegotiate, and
yeah,
then China agreed to it. And
yeah,
and he basically said, look, you can always make a counter offer, right?
yeah,
And the Chinese will work with you. So you really depend on the governance of the country that China is dealing with, that
yeah,
how they structure their deal with China. And you're right. I mean, China will deal with Pakistan no matter what kind of government. Even if the Pakistan military somehow magically poof, disappear overnight, and it became a happy democracy, civilian government. China
Maybe
will deal
maybe
with
Imran will get reelected, and then it'll
yeah,
just a
yeah, but
clean house.
China will deal with government of Imran Khan. China will deal with government of his successor, whatever, because Pakistan is a neighbor. Pakistan is not going away. So China recognized that. I mean, this has happened with China and Myanmar also, right? Like because the U.S. Deal with Myanmar junta to allow Aung San Suu Kyi to form a coalition government. Originally, that was to pivot Myanmar away from China. That was the design. The United States made no secret about it. But what happened was after Aung San Suu Kyi came to power, because Myanmar and China are neighbors, China still chose to deal with Aung San Suu Kyi's government. And in fact, the trade between China and Myanmar increased under Aung San Suu Kyi because after all the Western sanctions get lifted, the Chinese firm then have no fear of getting sanctioned by U.S. just for doing business in Myanmar. So that's kind of the Chinese non-interference policy. You will deal with no matter what kind of government you have, as long as you are internationally recognized legitimate government.
So what that means for Balochistan is that I think it's probably quite true that the project isn't working out as well as advertised, and that the benefits are not reaching the people. So and it's going to be hard. Like it's not, China can't make that happen in a country where if the Pakistan army is doing all these things and the government now, especially I think post coup, it's an even more corrupt dispensation. I argue. I've been I've been argued with about this.
I don't think it's just you, because I will send you a tweet from a Pakistani journalist, Ziad, and I think he put it he put it a thread. He said, this is what he said. He said, we our comprador elites and state authority tend to produce comprador critics who are then shaped up by the imperial core because they take convenient lines. Pakistani politics is mostly comprador versus comprador versus comprador mediated by compradors.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal, but I think he knows what he's talking about, being a Pakistani inside Pakistan.
We have good summaries on this program. Remember what did we say Canada was? Canada was a lobby for 4 mining companies and virtue signaling.
A bunch of mining company masquerading as a country. Yeah.
So yeah, this is I mean, these are all the former British territories. What did you think you were going to get? But okay, a couple more things before I let you continue your morning. Because in understanding that this the challenge of development in Balochistan is serious and headed in the wrong direction. After the coup, like the chances of Chinese investment alone being able to offer some kind of tangible benefit to Baloch people that draws them away from this kind of like terrorism is it's hard. It's hard to imagine because of the way that the dysfunctions of the state, and the IMF isn't going anywhere, the US alliance isn't going anywhere, the Pakistan army's interest in keeping the US happy isn't going to change easily.
The Balochistan problem is a Pakistan problem, right? It's something exactly. The Pakistan need to deal with, and this is something China has very little input actually, because
exactly.
If China try to dictate to Pakistan the way the United States does, Pakistan just gonna go for with US. I mean,
Yeah, like I had a guest on where he was saying like the cultural affinity where people want to be like in Pakistan is all with the US. Like China's very foreign to them. China's very exotic to them. You know, they don't send they want to send their kids to Oxford and Harvard and you know, they want to wear those clothes and they want to live that lifestyle still. So there's no like that's not like an aspiration to them.
Yeah,
They don't see China that way.
yeah. Because Chinese language teachers in Pakistan is actually Chinese culture imperialism.
Yeah,
It takes
and it's
away
they're
from that.
doing a hell of a job. But
Yeah.
this is my I guess, you know, we could kind of like wrap up with this question, which is like if it, to what extent can this derail um, you know, the China Pakistan economic corridor, you know, to what extent can it derail, you know, our Chinese people obviously are now going to think twice before they accept a posting uh teaching in you know, go to Pakistan, check out the culture, get blown up in a suicide bombing, right? So what do you think the implications of this are for not just like the bigger questions of investments and the alliance? I mean, the alliance is the alliance. That's a military alliance. It's a they're neighbors, like you said, but like the kind of economic integration that China hopes to do, and the kind of people-to-people exchanges that are part of that.
I
Um,
I think this impact what actually impacts Pakistan China relationship more right now is COVID. I don't
oh,
so this will definitely have a short term impact, but I don't think it will have long lasting impact because as I said the BLA attack on Chinese national in Pakistan has been long going. It's been almost a decade long attacks all over Pakistan that has not stopped. Chinese investment project in Pakistan, and right now as for people to people exchange, I think one of the problem is the current Chinese COVID policy is preventing a lot of Pakistani students who were previously studying in China to return to China to resume their study. So and also because of the various COVID lockdowns that kind of restricted the people, the movement across the border. So I think that's why I think that is actually a bigger issue in kind of putting a halt on the Pakistan China integration, and I think it will continue. The China Pakistan economic integration will continue. The COVID will blow over. Eventually, the borders will be open again. There will be more Pakistani students studying China in the future, learning Chinese language, including learning the
yeah,
Chinese language.
yeah,
Yeah, that will happen. And China and also China is a large country, so yes, there will be some people who will be dissuaded from, say, volunteering to go teach Chinese language in Karachi. But because China is such a large country, there were bound to be people who will still go. There will still be adventurous souls
yeah.
who will go to Pakistan. So I don't think that on that front it will have too much impact. I mean, and over long term, this after this incident, the memory of this incident, fades. The people to people exchange will resume. This is my my verdict.
So the last question
Yeah.
is then like in terms of because we sort of have been pointing a finger at a certain imperialist entity
Yeah.
as being behind this, but in terms of like part of what I see going on over the past couple of years is just like a desperation by the US to get back in there somehow after being thrown out of Afghanistan. So like I think there's a bit of vindictiveness towards Imran Khan specifically because of that. He was whatever his role, however big his role was, he happened to be the prime minister when they were thrown out. Um, you know, maybe there's these Congress people that talk about maybe Balochistan is the ideal base. Um, but they're out and they want to get back in. And and I feel like the other part of the story is preventing Afghanistan from completely starving and preventing Afghanistan from collapsing has fallen on to Pakistan and by extension to China as well, to Russia to some extent as well. So to Iran, to some extent, but I actually think the food thing is probably Pakistan at this point. So, to what extent do you think that effort to like keep Afghanistan on its feet and like bring Afghanistan into that Eurasian project, to what extent do you think this Balochistan kind of simmering thing can play in derailing that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't help.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think um, I this is my. I mean, I'm just making a stab here, right? I'm not the
Mhm.
expert, but I don't think you will have a long lasting impact, because the linkage with Pakistan and also China has with Afghanistan is not just through Balochistan, right?
Right, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like I mean it certainly doesn't help, but I think both China and Pakistan have a strategic interest to
Yeah.
keep Afghanistan as stable as possible, because they both understand, as neighbors of Afghanistan, if Afghanistan gets destabilized, then they will feel the spillover effects in their own borders.
And the
So
Americans will be back.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Ultimately.
yeah,
Yeah.
and with all the associated problems, and um I think Pakistan, China, and to certain Russia is a little bit distracted at the moment, but
Yeah, I'd say.
yeah, but I think Pakistan and China will definitely has a very strong interest to throw a economic lifeline to Pakistan to prevent
Yeah.
Pakistan from, I
To
mean, to
Afghanistan.
prevent
Yeah.
Afghanistan from implode.
Yeah.
And um and you see Chinese Prime Minister Wang Yi actually visited Afghanistan recently. On his
Yeah.
trip through the subcontinent, through South Asia. He went first visit India, and then he went visited Pakistan, and actually I don't I my order the order might not be correct, but he would visit all three countries:
Yeah.
Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. Indian media wasn't very happy about
And
that.
I think he went to Iran too, right? Didn't he go
Ah,
to
he
Iran?
might have. Yeah, he might have.
Somebody really important from China went to Iran recently, and I,
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was. Maybe
yeah,
it was him.
and so this is so I think China is very well aware of the current situation of Afghanistan, and they're very much keeping a close eye on it. And there I have been following the Chinese ambassador to Afghanistan, and I saw him tweeting about a couple shipment of trains laden with relief goods from China to Afghanistan. So I think they're definitely working on it. The current COVID situation in China is really kind of holding back on the effort, because all the border controls and stuff. So we'll see. Because right now China is also a bit distracted with its implementing its COVID containment policy in China. But once that's blow over, which will, China will probably redouble its outreach in the area, in the region.
All right, Carl. Thank you so much. Let's stop here.